For at least 200 years, gardeners have been using a simple, reliable technique to preserve their food for much, much longer. But it wasn't until World War II that canning, also known as bottling, really took off as a means of improving food security. Well, it's seeing something of a revival, and it's no wonder, because canning can lock in that just picked freshness for up to 24 months. Can you can? Of course you can! And today I've got two lots of lovely produce to can, these freshly picked beans and these really rather glorious tomatoes, and they smell divine too. Canning has always been popular with gardeners in the know, so it's great that more of us are cottoning on to this simple method of preserving the very freshest harvests. So let me show you what we're going to be working with today. Now, I wanted to keep this all as simple as possible, so for that we're going to be water bath canning. It uses a lot less specialist equipment. All you really need is a stock pot or canning pot like this. Now, this is a good size. It means I can can several pots at the same time and make the whole system a bit more efficient. Not essential, but I've got this kind of rack which sits on the bottom of the pot like that. It keeps the jars off the bottom of the pot so they're not rattling around. If you don't have a rack, you could just use something like some folded up dish towels put at the bottom just to rest those pots on. I've got some canning tongs here so I can easily move things about without burning my fingers. A wide mouth funnel which will make filling up the canning jars a lot simpler. A ladle, and then this rubber spatula. Now, do make sure that the spatula you use is either rubber or plastic, because metal could chip your jars and it could even react badly with the ingredients, and we don't want that. And then of course we've got our beautiful, stunning canning jars. Now, these are a bit of an investment, but once you've got them, they'll last for many, many years, and it's a beautiful thing to have. These ones come with a lid like that, which sits neatly on top, and then these kind of rings that hold it in place while you're processing it. And as I say, a little collection of these is a very fine thing indeed. So first, let's sterilize our jars to remove any risk of contamination. Just give them a good wash in hot soapy water and then rinse them off to remove any soapy suds and let them drain away. The lids can also be washed in warm soapy water and left to drain. But the bands here, they don't need any preparation because they won't be in contact with the food. With them all clean, I'm going to pop my rack into the bottom of my pot and then put my clean jars onto the rack ready to warm up and sterilise properly. Now, I've just covered the jars so the water sits about ½ an inch or so above the top of the jars, and now I just need to bring this all to a nice simmer. And once it's reached there, we're going to keep it lightly simmering for about 10 minutes to kill off any bacteria and other nasties. Now, when filling it with water, you can use slightly warm water, that's fine, but don't pour boiling water straight in because the temperature differential might cause the jars to crack. And for that same reason, once we've sterilised our jars, we're going to keep them nice and warm and hot and toasty until it's time to fill them, so there's no temperature shock. Now, you don't need me to patronise you, I'm sure, but the jars are going to be very hot, so just exercise a bit of caution. Don't do this barefoot or whatever, just be careful. Another option to sterilise your jars is just to pop them into the oven. Pop them in nice and cold like that, and then sterilise them for, again, 10 minutes once the temperature's been reached at 300 Fahrenheit, which is 160 Celsius or gas mark 2. Bring it up to temperature and then leave it for at least 10 minutes. Right, now while we are sterilising our jars, I can get on and prep my produce. Now, first up, the tomatoes. I'm going to keep them nice and simple by just simply canning them as whole as possible. I'm not going to process them much more than that. But what I do want to do is remove the skins, because I'm not mad keen on skins in my tomato sauces. If that doesn't bother you, then you can just skip this step. So I've had these kind of at a slight rolling simmer for about a minute. And what that does is it kind of makes the skins start to peel off. And then they're going into nice cold water like this. And it means that the skins just come off so much easier like this in almost one go. I'm not going to be too precious about getting every last scrap off of skin, just most of it off. There we go. It's quite satisfying when it comes off in one go though. Lovely job. For these bigger tomatoes, which I'm going to can first, I've simply cut them in half and then carefully cored out the most woody bit right at the middle there, just so they're nice and fleshy. And here are my prepped fruits. Now let's fill our jars, and I'm going to pack the tomatoes in so they come to within about ½ an inch or a centimetre of the top. And now I'm just going to pour over some hot water into each of the cans and let it settle. So again, it comes to with about ½ an inch or 1 centimetre of headspace at the top. Might use my spatula just to kind of eke it down a bit. And then in goes approximately ½ teaspoon of salt into each jar. And then the final touch is 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. Now I'm being lazy and using bottled lemon juice, but you could use fresh juice, of course, if you wanted. Now what the lemon juice is going to do is raise the acidity of the environment in this jar, and that'll help to keep everything safe, which is really important when you're water bath canning. It will help to prevent issues like botulism, which, believe me, we definitely want to avoid. Water bath canning is the lower tech and arguably simpler way to can, but it does rely on either having naturally acidic foods going in or adding something acidic to make it a more acidic environment. If you want to can non-acidic foods, then you'll have to pressure can. Now this does rely on a specialist piece of kit, a pressure canner, but it will greatly open up what you can. Now, if you look closely at these jars, like here, for example, there's the occasional air gap or air bubble, and we don't want that. We want to get all of those out. And this is where the spatula comes in. Just slip it round the side like that, all the way around. Very gently agitate your produce like that. Remove any air bubbles, and it will settle down a bit. If it settles down a lot, then you can just top it up with a little bit more hot water. But there we go, that's perfect. I think it's beginning to look quite colourful actually. Now we're going to put the lids on, but first just give the bands, or rather the threads here, a little wipe round to remove any splashback. And then to put the lid on, get it on nice and squarely, or should that be roundly, you know what I mean, like that. And then to hold it in place, on goes our screw band like that. And that just keeps the lid nice and sort of in place while we process it. They'll come off in a bit. Don't have to be incredibly tight, just kind of firm enough but loose enough to hold the lid in place. I'm just going to lower the jars into the hot water like that. And as you can see, the tops of the lids here are covered by about 1 inch or a few centimetres of water, which is perfect. They're fully immersed. Now let's turn it on and bring it to a gentle simmer like we were doing before. This time we'll keep it simmering for about 40 minutes to properly process our jars. Now beans are not naturally acidic, so to water bath these guys I'm going to have to create an acidic solution as well. This time I'm going to use a 50-50 mix of distilled or white vinegar with hot water. So I've carefully trimmed these beans and they're looking nice and even and really quite beautiful now. I'm just going to load up these jars with them and try and pack them in as much as possible. I think that's as packed as I'm going to get them. So into each jar goes a peeled and lightly crushed whole clove of garlic like that. And then ½ a teaspoon of chili flakes as well for a little bit of kick. You can add more or less to taste, of course. And then ½ a teaspoon of dill seeds. I'm actually using cumin seeds, so that gives a nice kind of aromatic kick. And then just like our tomatoes, it's in with ½ a teaspoon of salt. Now ideally you'd be using canning salt because it doesn't have any caking agent which can make the water or the liquid turn a bit murky. If you can't find canning liquid, then use something like I'm using, either kosher salt or sea salt, which hasn't got any impurities. And then it's on with our warm mixture, 50-50 water and our distilled vinegar, right up to the top, or not quite to the top, but leaving a ½ inch or centimetre of headspace at the top. And then just like before, I'm going to use the spatula to eke around the edges and jiggle things around to get rid of any air bubbles and trapped air. Right, while we're waiting for this last batch to process, we can go outside and pick some more fresh produce for canning. The best produce for canning has to be absolutely at its peak of ripeness. That'll lock in the best flavour indeed. You want things perfect and blemish free. Now I've saved a few slightly suspect tomatoes here to show you what you don't want. This one here, it's all right, but it's a bit soft and squidgy. Probably best to eat that as soon as possible. This one's got a bit of a sort of cracking along here, and this one's got some spotting, which could possibly be some sort of disease, and it's split here. Don't have those, just get yourselves these beautiful, perfect tomatoes. And look at these beans, clean, firm, not too old, just perfect for preserving. This tomato here is perfectly ripe, but anything paler like this, for example, I just leave on the vine as long as possible to get that perfect ripening. As I say, we want just perfect pickings for our canning. Right, let's go and check in on our beans, see how they're getting on. Ta-da! Time's up for these jars, so I'm just going to turn off the heat and then just let everything sit for about 5 to 10 minutes so it's not absolutely boiling hot. And now I'm going to carefully remove them, I think I'll keep the oven gloves on, from the hot water onto this waiting dish towel here. So I'm just going to leave these overnight to cool right back down to room temperature, and it's during this time that the magic happens. As the liquid cools down, a vacuum is created in the air above it, and it pulls the lid down, sucks it down and creates a nice tight seal. And that's what's going to help our produce here store for months and months and months. You might even hear the lids popping as the vacuum develops. Once everything is cooled down, just remove these screw bands here and then check that the lid has properly sealed. Now when you push it, there should be no give. It should be properly sucked down onto the jar. And look, you can sort of wiggle it about. It's properly secured there. If there's any give whatsoever, just pop that jar into the fridge and use up the produce that's in there as soon as possible. Store these successfully sealed jars in a cool, dark and dry place where your just picked, beautifully processed produce should keep for at least 12 months. For more on storing and preserving your own produce, including freezing and the best way to store root vegetables, check out this playlist next. I'll catch you next time.